Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I am Josh. That is Jeff. That is Jason. That is our guest, Ben Stewart, over there. This is the Redpill Project's Conversations on the Fringe, live with you every Friday night, 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. I hope everybody is doing well today. And this is going to be just we were kind of talking before all this started. This is going to be an interesting conversation. We got a good group of guys here with some very open minds. And we kind of just been talking about really, and I think everybody knows, is the Great Reset versus the Great Awakening. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. And, I think both of them, firstly, the Great Reset is interesting because it's been shielded from what it really is. It comes out on this platter that it's this beautiful thing, and everybody should accept it because we can all live as one and hold hands and sing Kumbaya. And then the Great Awakening is this thing that lives in mystery because no one really knows what it is. And so it's this interesting template that we have going on between the Great Reset and the Great Awakening. I'm going to welcome Ben. Ben back. He was here about a month ago, and we talked about a lot of different things from artificial intelligence, transhumanism, the future of technology, psychedelic drugs, the expansion of the mind. We had a really good conversation.
Biological meat suits.
Biological meat suits. Yeah. That's what everybody remembers. Biological meat suits.
I got my new one right here.
I'm working on my new one right now.
Yeah, you could say I've got a new one because, I got my baby face on.
Shaved a quarter of it off.
Exfoliating. Yeah, there you go.
But Jay, how you doing tonight?
I'm really good, man. I probably the best. You know what? I almost felt like we were coming out of that Jello that we talked about. I was driving home tonight from work, and I was like, you know what? Feels like the Jello is lifting, and that's a good thing.
Well, you know what happens? It's clarity and insight does that to you. It's when you start to see clarity and insight within your future, within your current states, and you see it progressing as you grow forth as an individual, as a human being. That's when you start coming out of the Jello. It's interesting though. I think about it that way, but I think that's a good way to look at it. Ben, how was your week, man? What's going on? What's new with you?
Oh, let's see. My week. It's been incredible. I mean, there's a lot going on with my Waking Infinity news. I'm about to start ramping that up to 2-3 times a week. I've been doing a lot of research and coming into contact with people that are also kind of looking into the same things that I'm looking into, and they're kind of filling in the gaps, and some of them are incredible, like Alison McDowell, Corey Morningstar. These are people that and I'll get into a little bit of their work later, but these are people who have looked deeper into the Great Reset, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and all these things. And like the one element that I see that I love of them is they're tracking the money. They know all the names. They know exactly how the different companies connect with one another and how technology is being used. Mm-hmm. The one thing I don't see them getting into enough is the hopeful side. And they seem hopeful themselves, but they don't really get into the hopeful side of technology. And they're basically, it seems kind of grim. So I would just warn anybody who's going to look into Alison McDowell and Corey Morningstar. Their work is incredible, but you can feel a little bit overwhelmed by it. So that's been my week, man. I dive deep into these things, and I do it specifically because I notice there's this gap. There's amazing researchers who can bring you the problem with so much clarity, and I don't see enough people that can bring you the same exact clarity in the same conversation on how this is easily solvable by the same things that we've always needed, which is togetherness, community. Right. And if we can only do it through our technology, then kumbaya, we have the technology in front of us. And there's other ways, there's things other than Zoom, like vMix and things like that. I think Zoom is bigger than Exxon right now. So like we're in a rapidly changing world, and I'm just trying to keep pace with it. Obviously I'm really keeping pace with what's going on in the country right now. It's been an interesting month. I can't remember the exact date I came on. Was that before or after the election? I think it was after.
It was after the election, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I've just been keeping my ear to the ground, my thumb on the pulse there, and very interesting times. If you listen to a lot of people out there, there's people saying things like civil war, and they're making it seem like it's pretty grim, and I'm like, okay, careful the way you use words, careful like what kinds of ideas you plant in people's heads, and yeah, I mean, I'm super excited about the way things can go. I just know that we have to wake up. We really do.
That's right.
And I applaud you guys for having this platform doing just that.
Yeah, that's what the Red Pill's about. And so we had kind of a tumultuous show last night. It was kind of heated towards the end. And guys, you know, this is the beauty of it. We can sit here and be 3 or 4 or 5 different individuals and talk different topics and argue on it and love each other after the end of it. You know, we can have a difference of opinion and still be friends. You know, the Red Pill is understanding how information is perceived by the individual, how our mind, our belief system is developed through authority, parents, education, through environmental stimulus, how all these things formulate the limitations of our mind and how that limits the we froze. If that information that comes in is manipulated in some way, shape, or form, we need to have the tools and resources necessary to look at it and go, hey, look, wait, hold on. That's not true. And that's what the Red Pill is about, is looking at the information and saying, you know what, that's bullshit, or hey, you know what, there might be some truth to that. And it's about discovering your own self-evident truth. And so we were talking about Tucker, we were talking about Rush, we were talking about Hannity. And, you know, I stick to my guns. I stick to my opinion on that. I support my opinion 100%. And if I'm wrong, hey, you know what? That's my opinion. Don't hate me because of that. That's just who I am, and that's where the road has led me. And if I am wrong, show me the proof. Show me the truth otherwise. Right? And so that's the beauty of this, is that we can have these conversations. We can have the Red Pill. We can do this, and we can all still love each other and be friends at all and work towards one progressive goal. And that goal is what I call, or what we call, the Great Awakening. And now you kind of touched on it, and I wanted to touch on this a little bit. For a person that's dove deep into information, into digging in the information, researching information, I know you've done this as well, is when you're unbalanced in that research, when you only dive in to one side of it, that's hell. That is hell. That's why we started this show, Conversations on the Fringe. All I did before was I just did decodes of all this information that was going out on the internet, the whole Q stuff and all this other stuff, right? And that's a deep, dark rabbit hole. It's a dark place to be in. And I will tell you, there's points and times during my week that, you know, I was feeling the darkness. And it was this show where I got to come on and we got to talk about any topics that we wanted. Just, you know what? Forget about everything that happened during the week. Forget about all the information we went over. Let's expand our mind and talk about what can be, what could be, and what is to come. And that's the beauty of this, is that when you're talking about those two people, those two researchers, that's my biggest recommendation to them, is you have to have a plan. Poison, the rock band, said it best. You got to have something to believe in, right? And there's got to be a place you want to go. There's got to be something that you're working towards. If I'm uncovering this information of evil, of Satanism, of whatever this stuff might be, you know, what's the bright side? Why am I uncovering it? I'm uncovering it because once the truth comes to the surface, now we have a new world to build. And that's what you have to look forward to. And so you can't research the shit without understanding the good.
That might be the most peculiar use of a Poison quote I've ever heard, but I love it.
That's me, bud. That's me.
Gives you something to believe in.
Dude, I dig it. I dig it.
You what?
I was just gonna say, you know, I think I was for Psychedelica season 2, and this was maybe 2 months ago. I was in Colorado, and I interviewed this woman named Maya Shatreat, and she's incredible. And she basically we were talking about stuff afterwards, and there's all this division. You know, she's connected with this guy Pete Evans, who I did a film with out in Australia, and there's just kind of differences between their political beliefs. And we were just talking about how divided people allow themselves to become. I wouldn't say how divided politics makes people, because politics is a tool. It doesn't make anybody do anything, right? You know, that's like having a fork in the road. It's not making me do anything. I could stand there, I could turn around, whatever. So I guess she said something very beautiful, though. She was just like, you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what happens to me or who uses what words or what justification I have for my actions. If I can, at the end of my life, erase all of what other people did and just look at my behavior, not in context of what they did or what they said or anything, just look at how I behaved, could I be okay with that? And that's why, for me, I love talking to people that have different opinions than me. And I love people who actually challenge me in ways that, you know, like they get riled up. And it's easy to get riled up when the person in front of you is getting riled up, especially if they have that energy that's kind of clashing, because that's the perfect time to practice your sparring. You know, you practice, how do you keep your center in the face of so much resistance, so much volatile energy? Man, that's why we're here. That's why I'm here. And I was actually told, you know, in a meditation 2 months ago, it was on this very same trip. I was told in a meditation, and I usually don't have these mystical experiences, but in this meditation, it basically said, you're going to need to understand how to hold that center when the world is freaking out around you.
That's right.
Because when your kids start freaking out, and your wife starts freaking out, and your family's freaking out, and everything is freaking out around you, they're going to need somebody to be an example to show love exists here too. Love belongs here. And when you said these dark, dark rabbit holes, when they get dark, where is light needed the most?
Darkness.
Needed in the dark. And so that's why I research the dark topics, because I don't see that there's enough light. And I'm not just talking like shedding light on it and exposing it. That's one thing, but bringing love into the darkness is one of the hardest tricks. And there's so many people that think, no, it does not belong there. And no, there is no place love does not belong. There's no place.
Exactly. Well said. Yep.
I think they call that be the calm before the storm, right? But then also be the calm in the storm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's all about somebody has to be grounded, right? I mean, if everybody's knocking off everybody else, then and there's nobody grounded, there's no direction.
You need examples. You need examples. Like, you know, I think it was a Daniel Siegel book. It was called Mindsight by Dan Siegel. And he was just talking about, you know, raising children. And he said one of the most important things for a child to have for their development is not a good upbringing. You know, it's to have an example, whether it be a parent or some kind of, you know, elder figure that has made sense of the ups and downs in their life and can show balance when expressing it. So for a child, it's, you know, like we're all going to experience some kind of, you know, ups and downs in our lives. That's just life. But to have examples of people who can make sense of it, like the Bodhisattva is this idea of somebody who's reached nirvana, but decided not to stay in nirvana, comes back down to serve love to humans who are in hell, to people who cannot get out of the rumor mill in their head or the drama or the infighting, is to serve love where love is needed the most. That's why Samael Aun-Weor, who is a Gnostic proponent and talked about Christ consciousness, he moved to Mexico City, one of the most polluted and crime-ridden places. And people would ask him why. You know, you can go live anywhere you want in the most gorgeous paradise. He said, this is where love is needed most.
That's beautiful, man. And that's the truth, isn't it? That's God's honest truth. Is that we should be going where love is needed the most. And, you know, especially in our families, is maybe that's one of the reasons why children grow up with problems, with the problems they do. This is the reason why, you know, people become adults and they lack empathy. Is because it's not that they weren't loved. It's just there was never that person that knew how to love.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, everybody has their own understanding of what love is. And I think that, You know, we love dogs and cats, and we love our children, and we love our wives, and we love our parents and stuff like that. We understand these different conceptualizations of love. But at the end of the day, you know, there's there's loving somebody, and then there's showing that somebody love. There's that actual physical, emotional, and spiritual connection that connects two people, three people, a family, whatever it might be. And that bond that's shared between them, that empathetic bond, that energy that's exchanged. That's the real love. That's the harmonious feeling that, you know, when shit gets astray, that child's like, I'm okay because you know what? My father loves me. My mother loves me. And I know it'll be okay because of that love. That's a strong central family. That's the nuclear family that we had prior to the 60s. That's what the deep state, the New World Order has broken up, is that they've taught us how to forget about love. In the mundane, tumultuous world of everything going on, they taught us to forget about love, of how to love.
What are the ways that they've done this? Look at all of the examples put in front of us. The examples of Hollywood, the examples of TV and where TV has gone, where something like, you know, back in Elvis's day, shaking your hips on TV, people were like, oh my goodness. And now you got twerking and nobody bats an eye at it, right? You know, it's a different world. It's changed very, very rapidly, all those values. And a lot of it is the examples that we give, you know? So that's why, you know, for me, I try not to be one of these individuals that's always speaking divinely and like, you know, like staying in that center, and I can only talk like, you know, an awakened being or something like that, because there's so many people that they get turned off it by that. There's no bridge there. There's just this island like, oh, look at Mr. Woke over there, you know, can never get to that place. You know, so I try and stay as relatable as possible while still showing like, you know, but there are some core tenets of respect and honor. And man, I was just interviewing a guy today. Have you guys seen the film Ungrip? I made it 2011.
No, I don't think I have.
It's on Gaia.
Okay.
It's also on my YouTube page. And it's basically, it's about law and it's about word magic. And I followed this guy. He called himself Rob in the Paget family, specifically because Robert Paget was his legal fiction name. Now, so if you guys know anything about like our definition of person means like, well, I'm a person, you're a person. That's the human being, right? But a legal definition of person means a corporation, an entity, a sole proprietorship. It is not a human being. It is the legal fiction that is a twin, in a sense. It's a fictional twin. So
a legal entity, yeah.
A legal entity. So I want to get back to the twin part a little bit later, because this really ties into what we're getting into, not just with 5G, but with 6G specifically. But so I did this film with him.
That was weird. That was like a crazy transition.
Dude, it goes wild. So what we're talking about is, where does law come from? And I was just interviewing him today. He said all law in most countries today is actually derived from the Bible. All law is derived from the Bible, and he traces it in his work. And he has Pacem Arts. So if you go to Patreon/Pacem Arts, PACEM Arts. This guy is brilliant, and he is now dubbed White Walking Feather by the elders of the Nehuim, which are the French call them the Cree. But the Nehuim, they dubbed him White Walking Feather and made him an elder because he gave up his citizenship. He revoked all connection under the crown. So he's no longer a feudal serf. He has none of those documents anymore. And the real thing that I'm getting at here is they told him, the indigenous told him, you are the land. Remember that. And they call him White Walking Feather. As you walking is a spiritual activity. And so now he literally travels across Canada. He calls it Turtle Island. He walks and he teaches. And this guy is incredible, but they said, remember, you are the land. And the land, we are not free if the land is not free. So he was doing all this. I'm relieving all my documents and everything, so I'm free from under the crown. but now I'm the land. You know, I'm the land the way that you see microbes in the soil. That is the land. Mm-hmm. And the beautiful part about this is when he started realizing that where all of this is headed, when you look at Agenda 21, sustainable development, what are their goals? And I had this in Esoteric Agenda 1, my very first film.
Back in what, 2006?
Well, that was 2007.
Okay.
And so Agenda 21, there was Michael Shaw in that film talking about, here's what they plan. And I couldn't even conceive of it back then. But here's what the plan is: to take the entire population, herd them into smart cities. I had no idea what a smart city was at that. I had no idea it was smart technology, like your smartphones now, like all the Internet of Bodies, Internet of Everything. It goes so much deeper than even I knew last time you interviewed me. So anyway, to get to the point, he said all humans will be herded into megacities and nature will be off limits to humans. And the whole thing is the Green New Deal. We need to let nature bounce back because we've destroyed it. Now, who's the we here? Who's the we? And who gets to say we destroyed it so we can no longer touch it? Literally, it is to cut us off from the land and keep us in these smart cities. So he, and this is the last point I want to leave you on, he wrote letters to the crown. And he's done this many times, and I have them on my computer right here. He basically said, you know, I am not a feudal serf. These are the processes I've gone through to get to this point. The queen is my sister. I am her brother. We are equals. We are both sovereigns under God. The only Lord I serve is the Lord God. I cannot have two masters. And he said, the land is ours. Your reign over the land has ended, and here's how it ends. I am inviting you to sacred ceremony. And the reason why I say that is because there's so many people that learn about law, and the way they bring it to the courts, they're like, I know my rights, and they wave it around like a child, right? Like a child that's learned a bunch of information, like college kid syndrome. You learn a bunch of stuff, but you don't have the wisdom, so you go out trying to debate people. Like, you're not trying to connect with the heart. You're just trying to chop people down with your intellect. He would go to court when people would, you know, bring him in because he didn't have a driver's license, and he would have a smile. Hello, Your Honor. You know, and they'd be like, are you Robert Paget? He'd be like, no, I'm this flesh and blood you see before me. I am this. And they would get so annoyed, but he would do it in such a way that he would diffuse any volatility in the room. And now he's inviting these people into sacred ceremony to give up their hold over the land. And basically, when you hold the land, when you actually own the land, the indigenous say, we don't own anything. We are here. We are of the land. We don't own it. Right. When you own the land, it's enforced slavery.
Agreed.
And this is the beginning of everything that we can get into when we're talking about the Great Reset, because the entire thing is predicated upon biocapital. We are all being mined for capital. Yeah. We are human capital. And this is one of the reasons why, if you look at the World Economic Forum, they're into reskilling. Oh, well, we need to reskill everybody to put them into new jobs and stuff like that. And this gender equality thing that they're calling for. Because the whole thing about sustainable development, all their goals are emerging markets. That's very important. There's social impact bonds that Goldman Sachs and other high net worth hedge funders, they're betting. They have digital twins, which is going to be very apparent once we have 6G. And I hope I'm not going over people's heads right now.
No, you're nailing it right on the head.
So once we get to 6G, the sentient world simulation will be fully live. And that means we have digital twins, and companies like Niantic, funded by In-Q-Tel, which is the venture capital arm of the CIA, now FBI, NSA, Department of Homeland Security, they're all hooking us up to devices in such a way. And there's even a Rockefeller thing called, what is it, the Scenario Planning Report, that basically had all these characters. And this was Cory Morningstar talking about this, where one of the characters goes and sees beautiful nature and sees this pristine river and wants to dip her toe in and then stops herself because it's illegal. touching nature will pollute nature. So the whole idea, and this is the Rockefeller Foundation saying this, we need to be separate from nature, right? Digital is safe. Stay home, stay safe, stay separate from nature. Digital is the safe way. So, this is the sanitize all the nature off your hands, make sure no nature comes out of your mouth. Why do the Hawaiians put their foreheads together and breathe the honi, the ha, the breath together, right? That's, they must all have COVID from this, right? Basic thing that I'm talking about is the main thing is when we are capital and you can take any piece of land like they're doing massively in India, in Goa, and they're saying, these are assets now. What are assets? There's value attached to that. And all the indigenous are saying, there's no value to this. It's land. It is us. You can't attach a value to it. But that's what is happening. We are being colonized down to the very fabric of our soul. And so this is where 100%. The solutions have to come in. The solutions definitely have to come in here.
So I'm going to ask the ultimate question. Okay. Why? Why do they want to do that? What is, as Alex Jones would say, the end game? What is the purpose of that?
I would love to answer you like I absolutely know the answer, but I'll be as humble as I can. I have several different very good ideas, and I can't tell you guys if any of them are correct. But here's what I would say. If you believe that not all life on this planet is terrestrial, not all of it originated here. Mm-hmm. Some say that fungi, it can survive intergalactic travel. It can get here, it can be in deep freeze, get here, and then seed the planet. And then over time, microbes are intelligent, parasites are super intelligent. Think about what a parasite does to triggerfish, making them swim against their nature up towards the top of the water so a bird can come, swoop down and eat it, and the parasite goes into the bird poops that out onto a field where ungulate animals like bovine creatures, cows, go and eat the grass, and that's where the parasite gets into the four chambers, the four stomachs of a cow, and lives out the rest of its reproductive cycles. That's how intelligent a parasite is. Imagine how intelligent fungi are. So to get to your question, why? If some of this is not terrestrial, then we are being strip mined. Everything is being strip mined. We have people like I said, I'll keep coming back to Alison McDowell and Corey Morningstar. Corey Morningstar did this really good dual interview with Alison McDowell where she's talking about the very next thing is to get people, like I said, herded into these cities so they can keep mining, because the whole idea is not really allowing nature to go back to nature. What are they doing in Goa, in these places where they're pushing humans out? Railroads, energy plants, railroads, superhighways and energy plants. So they're extracting, and we may be, this planet, whatever this planet truly is, could be being strip mined. And I have, a good friend, Max Egan from Australia, who looks at other planets, and he's like, I've been interviewing with him for more than a decade now. And I've traveled with him. I've traveled the world with him doing talks. And he's told me, like, Ben, you look at Iapetus, that moon around Saturn, that's the freaking Death Star. He was like, are all these moons, not all of them, but are some of the moons actually like spots where extraterrestrials or aliens, because some people split those into two groups, are hopping from planet to planet, strip mining them? Because then if you really want to take a look at it, it's just like, why would they destroy the planet? They inhabit the earth too. Why would they destroy it so much? Well, why are we hearing about aliens so much now? Why are we now starting to talk about going and colonizing Mars? Not visiting Mars, right? Colonizing Mars. Yep. Because everything is about colonization. And if you look at the history of colonization, it's very clear. And we're actually taking, I don't want to veer off track because I only gave you one example. Yeah. So let me not veer off track and let me just stay on. I'll get back to this other point. The other idea, the other why, is it could be a lot more energetic, a lot more psycho-spiritual, where when we are bereft of love, when we are devoid of love, and when we are not in contact with our love or even feel worthy with our love, which I believe a lot of people on this planet do feel that way. And if you do look at the way that some elites are raised, it's not even by their own parents. And sometimes I won't go into it, but like there's programming that seems to happen. And how could some of the most horrible atrocities actually get played out is because of that devoid of love. Yeah, and so in the Gnostic belief is that instead of raising up through all these levels to try and reach to heaven, to actually puncture through the other side like it's a donut, to actually puncture through evil so deeply that you can arrive back at some kind of heaven-like state. This is something that's been talked about by Gnostics. It's been talked about in Hinduism. I try and look at all the different ancient religions and see where there may be some overlaps. But those are two. Another could be both playing out at the same time. I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive. And another idea is that we don't understand what reality really is, and this is our test. This is Lucifer testing us. Are you going to stand by your Lord within your knowing of who you serve, or are you going to give it up for self-gratification? Right. Are you give up your voice because of fear? Are you going to not do the right thing because you're waiting for somebody else to make the first move? And here's where I think that actually might hold a little bit more truth. We are now in a time where you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to see the writing on the wall of what's happening right now. There's now that slogan is being thrown around everywhere. Everything's a conspiracy, even the Great Reset. Mainstream media is saying, Great Reset, it's a conspiracy. And you're like, it's an initiative by the World Economic Forum, who partnered with the UN, partnered with the WHO, and these are conglomerated, globalized forces. Yep. Like this is out of their own mouths. Klaus Schwab wrote the book, COVID-19, The Great Reset, using COVID-19 as the impetus for the Great Reset. And before I get super grim, none of this is beyond our control. Where I was going with that was, I think this is the impetus that causes us to wake up. Something's got to do it. Yeah. We're not just going to consume ourselves and eat ourselves, right? Yeah. We got to wake up somehow. I believe it happens now. And we were talking off camera about 2020 and December 21st, 2020.
You interestingly said,
I love it. I love it. Oh, this is good.
You interestingly said, what is it that is going to make us change? What is it that's going to wake us? And you know what it is? It's like anybody that's in drug abuse, alcoholism, it's rock bottom. And right now, humanity is at rock bottom, my friend. I mean, what you just said, I feel like just going out to my backwoods and just laying down and be like, all right, it's over. That's holy shit. Right? Well, but it's really not that way. And I think that,
it's not. And that's the thing. Yeah. It's an illusion.
Yeah.
It's an illusion. And I think this is so multifaceted, okay? Because 3 years ago, an anonymous figure came on the back channels and started posting some very patriotic stuff and some interesting leads and drops and started leading people in certain directions. This person, 100%, I'm a smart guy. I'm telling you right now, this person has validated that he has inside track and knowledge. He's directly connected to POTUS in some way, shape, or form. And he knows of things so well planned that 3 years later, he's on point. Okay? So they talk about the Great Awakening. And so we had the Great Reset, which Ben just laid out, versus the Great Awakening. Now, as for the Great Reset, I asked Ben if he had watched this documentary. I told Jay to watch it today. I don't think Jeff watched it. I was watching it last night. But it's called Close Encounters of a Fifth Kind, and it's by Dr. Stephen Greer. He's the one that's done the Disclosure Project, Unacknowledged. We're trying right now to get him on the show. I'm connected with him on LinkedIn, so I have an email out. But he did this new documentary, and I just saw it the other night, and I said, oh my God, that's it. I said, that is why the deep state, the New World Order, why they're trying to do everything Ben's talking about, why they're trying to get us into these smart cities, why they're trying to take us out of nature, is because consciousness at its deepest levels, and if you guys remember my understanding when I talked about the simulation universe, it was actually on this last show that we talked about, and I said, look, the simulation universe theory that everybody comes out and physics, oh, we might be living in a simulation, the computer can act like a computer program, is completely asinine, because the technology that we have is made out of atoms, and those atoms are prescribed by the laws of the universe, which means that all computers and all simulations that we have in our reality that we create are rudimentary, very, very elementary universes. They're just an extrapolation from the whole. And so to say that the universe is a simulation is not wrong, but it's actually the opposite. It's that our simulations are actually micro-universes in a sense. And so what I'm trying to tell you is that consciousness is how communication, travel, laws, everything operates. The universe, God, if you want to call it that, is we all exist within the mind of God. And therefore, everything is manifested thought. And I know this is over some people's heads, and I know some people don't like to hear this. But think about it. Is if you watch this documentary, he's going to talk about how they do meditations prior to going out and looking for UFOs. And the meditations they do, they basically locate an ET, an extraterrestrial, in the universe. And they give them their location. They zoom in on the location and they invite them to come. And 10 minutes later, these lights show up in the sky and they start dancing. They get healings. One dude was healed of a hearing problem. He had worn hearing aids his whole life. Comes out of it, no more hearing aids. They've gotten some interesting videos and pictures. And so the key there is Ben Rich, and they talk about Ben Rich, who is the former head of Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. Ben Rich once gave a private speech to a whole bunch of engineering students. I believe it was at Stanford or one of those universities. And he said at the end, he showed a UFO flying by a star, and he said, we now have the technology to take ET back to the stars, but you'll never see it come out of the black projects because of the level of control that's in our current government. And this one engineer who was there at that speech, who heard it, who was being interviewed by Dr. Stephen Greer, went up to Kelly Rich right afterwards and said, Mr. Rich, how does it work? And he goes, do you know how ESP works? And he goes, yeah, all points in space and time are connected. He goes, that's how it works. And you have to understand is Trump came out and created quantum.gov. He funded programming, right? He funded programs for quantum networking. Basically, cities to start building quantum networks. This is network devices that operate exactly like what they do now, but they utilize quantum entanglement as a methodology of information dissemination, which means that you can transfer information instantaneously when it works. Then we have all this other stuff coming out. And so there is this...
Hold on, you got to back up, though.
Yeah.
Because he says you can do this light years away. You can do this millions and millions of miles away.
Distance has no relevance.
No space.
That's right.
Yeah.
In the ultimate is... And I wrote this down earlier, and I don't have the quote with me, but... You have to understand that separation in this universe is simply a process of not knowing what you don't know. Right? What you don't know is what you're separated from. That is the only separation that exists in this universe. That means that everything that you come in contact with, everything that you learn and understand is the known universe to you. I think it was... oh man, who was Braden? What's his name? Not David. Greg Braden. He once said, he goes, look, maybe what is really happening in the universe is every time that we look through a telescope, we're seeing a possibility that has not been defined yet. And that our mind and imaginations are the ones defining it and creating it as we look.
So it's ever expanding?
Yeah, it's ever expanding.
Yeah.
But so when we start looking at this, what is the Great Awakening? And Dr. Stephen Greer goes into this. He goes, these aliens have tried to make contact. They're making contact with them right now. And whatever people think aliens or demons or not, I can tell you that angels and demons are of that sort. They both are. There's angelic ones and there's satanic ones. There are bad ones and there's good ones. But we have to understand is a lot of these ones are trying to help us, to break us free of this prison. And the other day, last week, and I asked Ben about this, is that this doctor, Dr. Haim from Israel, he was a former head of Israeli space security, comes out and says, aliens are real. The U.S. has negotiated treaties with them. They said that most of humanity is not ready, but Trump had negotiated a disclosure and they had bring them down, but something happened. This was directly on point with what we were talking about back in July and August, directly on point with what Dr. Michael Salla was talking about, and now it makes complete sense when you watch this documentary by Stephen Greer, because it puts it in the full perspective. There is a galaxy waiting for us to wake up. There is a control structure, whether it's off planet or on planet right now, that is in place so that we don't. And the reason is maybe it's control, or if we go David Icke's route, we can talk about like parasitic vampires, interdimensional parasitic vampires, which is not far-fetched, honestly. This is 2020. Shit, anything can happen, okay? But if you think about it, you take people out of nature and in the environment. What do? You're taking them out of love. You're taking them out of that connection with their soul. That means that they are living in any state that you want to put them in. And most likely that state is going to be a state of slavery. And anybody who's in a state of slavery is in a state of fear, of panic, of fight and flight. And that charges their batteries at that level.
Yeah, when we're talking about indigenous, it's funny, so the Hawaiian, and actually many people wouldn't use that term for them. Many Hawaiians wouldn't use that term for them, but the Hawaiians, I'm forgetting the elder, Uncle Robert, I think was his name, and he just passed not too long ago. He had a friend who I met. His name was Gary. I think Gary, not Zamber. It was another Gary. Anyway, he had this architect build the Star Sanctuary visitor center, and it was basically an elder of the Hawaiians saying, this time we're coming into, we're going to need support from our star sisters and brothers. Now, if you go on Collective Evolution, they're talking about left and right, indigenous, who are talking about meetings with star people from way back. South Americans talked about that. Even the ones who were doing yahe, which is a form of ayahuasca with 5-MeO-DMT instead of just the NN-DMT. What else was there?
Hopi Blue Star Prophecy. That was a good one.
The Hopi Blue Star Prophecy. The other one we're talking about, the indigenous of Australia. I call them the originals. There's something going on at Uluru, December 21st there. Mm-hmm. And I'll send you a link.
Yeah, I want to hear about that.
It was really interesting because there was just this one white guy who said, I'm the only white guy invited to this all Aboriginal meeting there. And we're going to be going there. And there was something where it was just something big happened there where they weren't even allowed at Uluru. Uluru is a sacred rock, and it goes like a horseshoe. It's an interesting mineral. Goes under the ground and comes up like 40 kilometers away. So it's just this red rock sticking out of the ground, and a horseshoe's under the ground and comes up 40 kilometers away. Very interesting. Their lore says that it's migrated across the planet. Mm-hmm. But anyway, December 21st, the winter solstice of 2020, they gather there. And apparently there's a piece of technology there hidden as a rock. And if you know about Australia, it's primarily a desert, almost the size of North America.
Right.
And so there's a lot of rocks out there. And only the indigenous know where it is. And if that sounds far-fetched to you, just understand that they used to travel through the desert where every direction looks exactly the same. And obviously sun going overhead is one way of following it, but they would be able to take people, and this was just 100 years ago, they would be able to take travelers by singing to memorize where they are on the land to a place in the desert that you could only see from less than 3 meters away. Miles and miles and miles of trekking across land that looks exactly the same. So these are people that would be able to find this device. And once they unlock it, they say that this is from the Pleiades. And whatever that means, you know, whether it was planted here from there, it's a technology that they say is going to work with the Schumann resonance, which is, in a sense, the pulse and the vibration, the frequency of the Earth, which there are many, but 7.8 is the main one, which matches with our alpha waves in our brain waves. Yep. And once this technology goes off, and it kind of correlates with something in Corinthians that I'll tell you guys. But once this technology goes off, the Schumann resonance will start raising to 150. It won't immediately go that to 150 because everyone on the planet, almost everything would die at that point. Right. So it'll slowly raise. And most people won't be able to handle it. This is part of their prophecy. Most people won't be able to handle it. They'll cower in fear. Many people will have heart attacks, and the rest will start to adapt to it, and their frequency will change. And everything below, all the dark, low vibratory beings that David Icke would talk about, will not be able to inhabit this land. And it's kind of interesting if you think of pH. You ever heard, like, you know, if you change the pH in your body by eating the correct foods, cancer, parasites, you know, pathogens cannot exist in your body because it's not habitable. That's why parasites cause you to eat more junk food to make you more acidic, to make a system that's more conducive to them. So that's what this technology apparently is. And the very specific time frame is December 21st, 2020, which is now so many people are saying this is the real 2012. Not that 2012 wasn't a thing, but this is the real 2012. And there's many different indigenous groups that are pointing to this time. And they say on December 21st, 2020, this year, coming up very soon, actually 10 days.
Yeah.
In 10 days at 9:04 a.m. Uluru time. So you have to do the math. At 9:04 a.m. Uluru time, focus your attention, and your and just pure love and awareness to Uluru. And they said it is done. These are the prophecies that we're talking about. Now, mind you, is it true? It's true that it's a prophecy, but the indigenous are going out there. The rainbow prophecy, what was it? The blue star Hopi prophecy.
The Kachina, the Hopi blue star Kachina. And so for everybody that doesn't know what that is, and this is fairly recent. I think it was the early 1900s or late 1800s when it actually happened. You had the Hopi Nation. What happened is a spacecraft crashed on their land, and they went to it and they recovered an alien being who survived. I think like 2 of them died and 1 survived. And they brought them and they shared their fire with it. And this alien lived with them for many years, and he shared what's called the Hopi Kachina prophecy, from what I've read of it. I mean, I read this back in the 90s. But there was a series, I believe, of 10 to 12 things that would happen. And right now, every single one of them has happened. And the last one is the appearance of the Kachina, the blue star. Now, some people believe that the comet that we had a few years ago that was blue in the sky was the Kachina, and that was right before 2012. Now, listen, the 2012 thing, and I will play this, and people want to debate me on this, go right ahead. I think a lot of that was disinformation to get people false pretenses, to get everybody all riled up, and then nothing happens. All of that was disinformation. That was the basically feed. Everything in the 2012 is disinformation. I could tell you right now the real end, and I just showed you this. I showed you it from Nostradamus' last prophecy, was December 21st, 2020. And that comes about through the great conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter happening on that day. And if we understand Saturn and Jupiter, if you go back to Roman and Greek times, you have Jupiter and Zeus. Zeus and Jupiter are modeled after the Hebrew god in the sense of perception. This would be Elohim or Jehovah or Yahweh is modeled after Zeus, or Zeus was modeled after this god, however you want to look at it. The long white-haired, white-bearded father god. Saturn, Kronos, was modeled after, or in current mythology represents Satan. So this is the battle of good and evil happening in the sky. And that it happens on the winter solstice, at the change of an age, at the end of a full precessional cycle. My mind is just like understanding that, like that all that is occurring is just like there are no coincidences. And if you don't understand the mathematical statistical probability of all that happening at once, you're not paying attention. It is fucking mind-blowing. And so I can tell you right now is that, yes, this is the real 2012. And all that means is that we're coming to the end of a galactic precessional cycle. Is we completed one whole loop around the galaxy. And what I like to tell people, Ben, and I try to get them a little bit of physics in this, is that our star actually moves as a corkscrew. And it's actually in this kind of gravitational tug with another binary star system. And it kind of goes like this, but they're going in corkscrews. And so they go up and down like this. And so it's believed that precessional wobble is actually created by this binary shift. Now, when the sun moves through the galaxy, you have to understand in the sense of how gravity works. Gravity is centered towards the center of the galaxy, but then it flattens out on the discretion disk. And that is the center. So if you basically took a washer, okay, that washer would be the distribution of all the matter and material in the galaxy. It's flat all the way across. But that distribution also is concentrated in the center and less dense on the outer edges. Okay? But so if you go above that disk, it's less concentrated. Go below that disk, it's less concentrated. So if you think about our sun moving through the galaxy, through this galactic year, it goes above the disk, through the disk, below the disk, above the in the disk, above the disk. And this matches our 11-year solar cycle, etc., that you know about. Now, what's interesting about that is we're talking about material forces. We're talking about physical and energetic forces. When our star system is actually moving through that galactic disk, that galactic center, there's energy present there. There's material atoms. There's all types of different things, virtual particulizations. And we also have this other energy, this life force energy. And so we can enter through what me and Jay call the jello, right? You go through this really thick, dense area. Then all of a sudden, one day you just pop out. And it's over. And everything is just lightened. If you go into the understanding of the Vedas talk about the different ages, the ages of Brahma, the breaths of Brahma. And each one, the first breath of Brahma lasted, I think it was 3 billion years. And it was 3 billion years, human beings lived to 100,000 years old and were 10,000 feet tall. And in the next age, it was 3 million years, and they were 1,000 feet or 10,000 feet tall, and they lived 1,000 years. And then it kept on getting smaller and smaller and smaller. What they were trying to tell us was not in actuality, literal terms, this is what happened. They were trying to tell you is the state of consciousness becomes more and more dense into the material form. The material form becomes more absorbent of the spiritual, the life force, the life body. And that this is the true union of the alchemical process, is to bring this process to a point of optimization. Because when we move out of that massive gravitational disk, which I believe is happening right now, is basically what's happening. This point is marked. The end of this calendar, that point is when we come out of that last section of the middle pillar, of the middle section. We're coming right out of it. We're about to pop out of it, and it's going to be like we're coming out of the jello into thin air. And that is the golden age. That is all these half cycles of golden age. Like when Jay said that Trump said we're going to have 3,000 years of peace. The Christians talk about Jesus' 1,000-year reign. This is what it's meant by, is that we're coming out of this massive, dense area of the galactic center, and now we're going to be in this area where spirit can be absorbed way easier. We're not going through this density of Saturn, of Satan, of whatever you want to call it. And I think what people are trying to do is they're really trying to hold on to the old guard, to the old age, to everything that has passed, right? The levels of control and manipulation. Because they know is that, like the prophecies you just talked about, you can't stop what's coming. You cannot stop what's coming. People are going to wake up, and it's going to be it's going to be amazing. It's going to be beautiful. And that's really what I think the Great Awakening is. It's just this conscious revolution, this conscious awakening that, like, wait, I'm more than just my body. Like, wait, I'm free to, like, transgress the universe in my mind. Like, huh? What? You think about things like astral travel and these types of things. They're going to become much, much easier. Think about, if you've ever read a lot of, like, the Mahabharata and all these grand epics, you start hearing even in the Bible they talk about it. You know, I was within spirit. Within spirit means I'm in astral travel. And back then, those types of things were a lot easier to do. And you have to ask yourself, why were they easier to do then and not now? Is it a lost tradition? Is it a lost secret? Or are we just going through a density within the universe, within the galaxy, that impedes that level of understanding, that level of knowledge?
Shamans in South America that you speak to say that what we can do today it doesn't even hold a candle to what shamans could do 1,000 years ago. They could change form, blink in and out of existence. They could fly. They could shapeshift. They could, like, change their appearance. Many, many things. They could heal with their hands. They could move their hands into solid objects and heal with their hands. And today, it's really more the memory of those things. The interesting thing is like, you know, so people across the planet wake up. I feel like most people, it's not just going to be without coming face to face with some of their trauma, some of their actions, some of their behaviors. I feel like there has to be some kind of like a, you know, at the end of life, 20% of people who have cardiac arrest experience a near-death experience. Mm-hmm. And there could be correlations there with DMT. There could be correlations there with gamma, because many different things, like there's actually, it's when you have cardiac arrest, your brain is hyperactive, not hypoactive. Mm-hmm. It's not dead. It's got a lot of activity in it. And they're finding high gamma at this point. And they found it in rodents. Stands to reason that it's the same with humans. 20% of people who have cardiac arrest, they say they experience a near-death experience. And so there's always there's very specific things that they come encounter with. A life review. A lot of them float up and out of their body, and they're able to see things not with their eyes. They're hearing things not with their ears. They can hear what's happening on the other side of the galaxy, on the other side of the planet, all things at once. They understand in different ways. But they have that life review. And there's something interesting about the life review, because everything they've ever done, all the peak moments, all the things that they've said to people, they feel it from the receiving end. If they've shared a harsh word with somebody, or if they've done something, not standing in their own honor, they feel it from the other side. They feel it from the receiving side, which is quite interesting. So I wonder, this is why I truly believe this is one of my purposes here on the planet, is because I know this is coming. What we're talking about, I know. I don't need to say I believe it. I know it. I know it's coming. And I also know that there's going to be a lot of, there's going to be a lot of people not understanding what's happening to them, as if everybody was red-pilled without their knowledge, right? Or if everyone was dosed with ayahuasca without their knowledge, or if everyone started having an awakening experience and they didn't realize it was time to leave the old paradigm behind. Yeah. I just feel it. And, in a sense, that's why for years now, how I've been preparing is now I'm putting it into online courses and really working with clients here in my office and out in my gym, is to work with people in moving their bodies, breathing, getting back into nature, using their voice. Very, very important to use your voice, not just to sing, but to use it aligned with what you truly believe in, and to start working through and start equipping yourself with tools and skills to face this filter that we're going through. Because you pass through the filter, you can't bring everything with you. You're going to need to leave all those bags of burden behind you. But I don't feel like this is a just blissful orgasmic experience for everybody. And mind you, some people do experience orgasm as pain.
Yeah.
And the difference between pleasure and pain is more psychological than it is biological.
Well, you know what is, the creation of life, right? The birth of a new baby born is pain. As beautiful and creative as that is, you have to have the birth pains. You have to go through the birth pains. And I think, if you're a woman who's pregnant and you train for it and you use a doula and you do a water birth, and the pain is minimized, and it's actually maybe even a delightful experience in a sense. I don't know, right?
Nassim Harriman's wife had an orgasm at birth.
That's right. And so if you're prepared for it, it can be very orgasmic. Where if you're not prepared for it, it's very painful.
It's exactly what I'm talking about in this time period that we're all headed into. And, I'm by no means, every time I do plant medicines, which I don't even do that often anymore, but every time I do it, I experience things that you could only describe as like dealing with my shadow. I'm dealing with aspects of myself and things that I've done in the past and things that I keep cycling over, and I'm not growing. I just keep coming back to the same things over and over and over again. And really what I believe my role is here is the same as many people. I'm not unique. I'm just one that's stepping into it very, very clearly. Is I know there's going to be a lot of people who do not understand what's happening to them, what they're experiencing. And so the awakening protocols is what I'm bringing, and to show that there's residue. When you're awakening, it's beautiful, but that doesn't mean that, like, there's a lot of people who have gone through some kind of an awakening, doesn't matter how it happened.
Yeah.
And they don't understand why they don't relate to their husband or their wife anymore. And they don't understand why they can't talk to their friends the same way anymore, or they don't enjoy the same kinds of activities and even foods, and everything in their life starts to change. And if they weren't prepared for that, not just intellectually, but prepared for it by going through periods of letting down things that you are addicted to, your technology, your food, your habits, your behaviors, your thoughts, your ruminating, whatever it is. So I feel like this is where, when I say community, we need community now, is we need people like many of us who woke up at least a decade or so ago. Why did we wake up then? And why are there people waking up now? Well, we needed to wake up then to do our inner work in order to be there to hold space for people who are going through that process now. And this is what all secret societies, mystery schools, the military, jobs, everything is this. You have a senior guy who's bringing up the neophytes, and it's, so you have like the master, you have the journeyman, and you have the entry level, the neophyte. So you have the master who's training the neophyte, and then you also have the journeyman who's helping train the neophyte. The master is training the journeyman. But once the master goes on and passes on to the next plane, the journeyman becomes the master, and there's a new neophyte. Well, this is the same as a child, an adult, and then a leader or a teacher or, a guru, a sage. And this is what we are here for. We are here to bring people through the awakening.
This is beautiful because, this is not just, this is serendipitous. I was going to call it irony, but it's more serendipitous because exactly what you're talking about is why we're all here. Think about this. I was woke a long time ago. I started reading. I've been doing research. Around 2007, I came across your movies, your documentaries. I gave them to this guy and woke him up. Okay? Him and me started doing all this stuff and woke this guy up. And now all of us are sitting here talking about all this. It's like full circle, but very serendipitous how it happens. That's the power of the red pill. It always will come full circle, and it has a point. It has a purpose. Right? Truth has this way of spreading.
It's so interesting. I was on a podcast with a guy the other day, and he was talking about these cycles of time and how, like, I watched your films way back when, but I didn't really know what it was about. And then here years later, I'm experiencing the things you were talking about in your films, and now I finally get it. And I wish I could have just dug in deeper and understood it back then. And I just said, when you plant a seed, does it bear fruit immediately? No. And so like everybody's got to start somewhere. And so my documentaries, they planted seeds in me. I would say the reason why I made those films on a soul level was so other people who had done more work than me could say, Ben, good job. I appreciate your film. Here's where you got it wrong, or here's where you need improvement, or here's, you got to study this, or man, you got to check this person out. I woke up not because of the films. I woke up enough to make the films, and then the community gathered around me because I used my voice and I said it out loud and I made it public, and the community gathered around and said, Ben, let us help you rise through all of your shit a lot quicker, because we're going to need more people like you. And I kept thinking, there were so many people that were like, Ben, you should make a film about this, and you should make a film about that. And I kept thinking, why don't you guys make these films? I just made a film. You could just make a film. And I thought about that, and I said, well, you know what? Maybe that's not their job, and maybe that's not what they're here to do. And maybe I really am here to make these films and to use my voice in this very specific way.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm still here making films. And that's why I believe that like we all need to use our unique gift, but we need to use it now. And really it's accelerating. Like if you thought 10 years ago, oh yeah, we're all going to have to wake up one day. Well, guess what day it is? That day. It's the day. It's now. The changes are already upon us. They've been upon us for quite some time. So this is what I actually find is beautiful, because the more I research, man, I made all these notes and I didn't even get through half of it when it comes to
time left.
Fourth revolution and like the One Health Initiative, that's basically this whole narrative of human encroachment on wildlife. And this is why zoonotic diseases are coming up, like swine flu because we're too close to pigs, and like bat flus because we're too close to bats and stuff like that. And it's this narrative that's really like, we need to separate humans from wildlife, otherwise we're going to keep experiencing pandemics. And really there's so many different ways to break down that issue. But the bottom line is, it is the narrative that most people on this planet are hypnotized by. And when I say it's going to be a wake-up call for people, for some people it's going to be hard, for some people it's going to be glorious, for other people they've been preparing for it, it's just going to be another day at work, if you will. But to get rid of the narrative is going to be the hardest thing, because so many of us, it's not the fact that it's going to be this thing we got to get over, or a new task we need to learn. We need to admit, we need the humility to admit we were grabbing onto something that wasn't true, and it was never permanent to begin with. Right. All of us have done this. We all know what this feels like. And really the biggest testament to this is death. We all have to learn from death. That's the final, filter that we pass through when we realize, what is death? Like, that band, NERD, nothing ever really dies. Everything's the transformation of energy. And so what is death? We all have to learn one day, and we can't see beyond that veil. And that's the apocalypse for every
transmutive cycle, the ultimate unveiling. So for those out there, if you want to understand etymology, apocalypse basically means the unveiling, the lifting of the veil. And this is derivative of the Sadic Isis in ancient Egyptian mythology, who wore the veil over her eyes, which contained behind the veil the mysteries of the universe, the truth of the universe, the truth of existence, of life. And only one man came before her and lifted that veil, and that was Hermes Trismegistus, or Thoth, if you want to talk about it that way. But that's a story for another day. I wanted to touch on something here.
Yeah.
So you were talking about, in this, like, I get those, like, brief moments of clarity, right? You were talking about, when people sometimes astral travel or have those near-death experiences, they immediately have these life reviews. Now, that's very interesting, because if we think about it in the sense of conscious technology, now go to Rupert Sheldrake and start thinking about morphic fields. What does your morphic field do? It imprints information, which means that if your astral body, the first field that it comes in contact with is your morphic field. And that is the information of your life. That is the layers of your existence that it's passing through. And so I found that, because that's the idea that came in my head when you said that. I go, oh my God, that makes so much more sense now why we have a life review. It isn't like, God saying, this was your life. It's us passing through the layers of information that have been stored within our energetic field of who we are. And then also, you were talking about the way before this. You were talking about the Schumann resonance, the rising of the Schumann resonance. And I started thinking, I'm like, I know that our alpha brain state is synchronized with the Earth's Schumann resonance, which is basically, for those that don't know, is you have the ground of Earth, which isn't flat, it's variable, but on average you have about 7.8 hertz, and that goes between the ionosphere to the ground of the Earth. And it's basically what Nikola Tesla was talking about when he was trying to do his free energy. HAARP utilizes the ionosphere to do what it does, all these cool things. Well, that frequency that Earth naturally produces is synchronized with your brain state, your everyday normal. I think it's actually your flow brain state. Alpha brain state is kind of like your optimized brain state. And I started thinking about this. If we didn't have the moon, the ionosphere would actually be much larger than it is now, which means that the resonance of the Earth would be at a different variable frequency. And so then you go into and I remember sitting at CU Boulder and sitting in a geophysics class, and they're talking about the creation of the moon and how it happened 2 billion years ago, and how they know it happened because basically they say is some planet, small planet, crashed into the Earth and the moon was formed. And I raised my hand and I said, well, how do you know that the moon came from the Earth? And they said, well, we have, what is it? The dating, the carbon dating, and they use not carbon dating, but they use another form of dating, which they're able to tell that the exact rock on the moon is the same rock from the Earth. And I said, well, that's great. Where's the planet? Where's the planet that crashed in? Did you guys ever carbon date that and find out how old that is? Oh, we never found any of it. Which begs the question: if the only theory about how the Earth or the moon came into the existence is a small planet crashed into the Earth, where the hell is that moon? Where the hell is that small planet? And why haven't they detected any rocks from it? They haven't, and they won't, because that's not what happened. What if David Icke, in a sense, was correct, that the moon was a satellite, and it was put here for a specific reason? And that specific reason was to put us in a mental prison, to downgrade. We've all talked about this the fall from Eden, right? To downgrade our conscious state. And they did that by changing where the ionosphere is in the sky and creating a different resonant structure on the Earth, downgrading our conscious level of understanding and expansion. And now here's the thing, is that degradation would take time. It would happen slowly, because like you said, you can't just increase it fast. It would have to happen slowly over time. And now you go back to what we were just talking about with the shamans and everything, and how we were able to do miraculous things 10,000, 5,000 years ago. And now it's all about materialism. Start putting that together. It starts to make a lot of sense. But I mean, it's a lot of skepticism. Don't get me wrong. I'm being very speculative here, guys. But
the interesting thing about that is, so the very same guy who was invited to Uluru in Australia with the Aboriginals for December 21st said that this process, and he said there's a slight chance that people don't react well to it. Like, the process is happening no matter what. If people do not respond well to it and people do not awaken, because I feel because they keep turning back away from their fear instead of into it. And mind you, fear is a teacher. What is fear? How tangible is fear? Fear is the darkness that we refuse to look at. And so fear, to really understand it, is our teacher, is the greatest teacher, is the teacher that we haven't listened to, meaning it's the lessons that we need the most. And so the interesting thing about that is he said that should people not awaken for some reason, what would happen? He didn't mention anything about the moon, but when you were talking about what if the moon were to move away or move closer, what does the moon control massively on this planet?
Yeah. It controls the tides, the water tides. Right. It controls moods, emotions. It controls werewolves. No, but I think I know where you're going.
Werewolves.
Is you have the Enuma Elish. Right.
He said tidal waves. He said the planet would flip 3 times on its magnetic axis and wash everything away.
So the Enuma Elish is the Babylonian epic talking about Tiamat casting her salty waters upon earth. This is also portrayed similarly in the book of Enoch, the Great Flood. Mm-hmm. Now, what if, and this was the destruction, right, of the children of the gods, etc. This was the destruction of that world and the birth of the new one. What if that was putting the moon into place?
Yeah. You know who you should definitely read if you haven't already? And I think he's got a show on Gaia, Anton Parks.
Okay.
He's got a book called Eden. And he is one of the foremost Assyriologists, the linguist that actually decoded the clay tablets. And so he goes into the story of Tiamat in a very interesting way. He specifically, he kind of, he talks about Zecharia Sitchin as being like, he was almost on, but he was very off in some ways.
And I've said that here before as well.
But this guy, he's still saying like, but the visitors from off planet and them being not human, but them having a part to play in humanity and slavery and what slavery is today, which is very interesting because when I was talking about being a feudal serf, being a number, I said in my film on Grip, you look at your birth certificate. On the back, there's a number that's related to human resources, and that is held in a human resources office rather than, than like a doctor's office or something like that.
It's actually held by the Department of Treasury.
We are a human resource. So these, basically those digits, that is now equating to our human capital, in the proposed new world, basically the proposed biocapitalism, where basically everybody is now being mined. And, I didn't go deeply into this yet, but like Niantic, Niantic, is a company. Again, they were funded by InQtel, and the Q actually comes from Q from James Bond, the technology, whatever, the guy who provides all the technology. Yeah. But InQtel, they are the venture capital firm or arm of the CIA. Yep. Now they've broadened their reach to the FBI, NS, Department of Homeland Security. But they're funding Niantic, and Niantic is all about, basically, think Pokemon Go, because it's a big part of them, but it's turning all of your businesses into virtual businesses. It's turning historic sites into virtual places that you visit. So you can do it from home. So it's keeping you home, right? And I mean, there's so much, man, there's so much, I guess I can't get into all of this, but like the haptic devices, if you know what haptics are, they're going to start using haptic devices, which are, if you've seen people using like a specific glove to control like a remote control, or go on TEDx and look at drones, like new aerial athletic abilities. I think, it's athletic abilities of drones now. And there's a guy who doesn't even have these devices on. There's like one of those gaming things that is it monitors your gestures, right? And it's like, I forget, like, we had that where it was like, it's a camera pointed at you and you just make gestures and it translates that.
We and the Xbox both have them. Now, what's interesting is InQtel also funds Looking Glass, which is a company, a cybersecurity company, and Palantir. Now, Palantir is the name comes from Lord of the Rings, The Eye of Sauron, the Looking Glass. Now, Palantir is a Peter Thiel company. Yep. Okay, he's the chairman, and they're into deep machine learning. And basically, I'm telling you, they have probably one of the most powerful AIs on the planet that you've never heard of. And not only that is geolocational, geotagging data. We did some stuff on them, and my other guys that do on the show on Saturday night, they dug deep into this. But it fits in exactly with everything that you're saying, 100%.
So this whole system, basically, this planet, the plan is to have. So when you were talking about geolocation, geofencing. It's basically when you walk past a certain boundary line and you have a device on you, it pings. It says, it's almost like in Minority Report when Tom Cruise is walking through the mall and all of a sudden there's this woman who talks directly to him. It's just like, hey, blah blah blah, how did you like that thing that you just bought? And trying to sell stuff to you. How does it know you're there? Because of this geofencing, this geolocation in real time. So this also gets to the disillusion of brick and mortar economy. So what is COVID-19 doing? It's decimating the economy, what we call small business, the economy, mainly brick and mortar. And this is also part of the whole grand push to get rid of these locations, to have us in these smart cities where, like Austin, they have like new low-income housing, which is cubes on top of cubes, where there's
Tokyo or Hong Kong.
60 smart devices already retrofitted into these homes with retinal scans to get in. Yeah. What happens if you go to a protest or speak out about something and your retinal scanning doesn't work and you can't get in your house?
Locked out of your house because you're at a protest.
Yeah.
Now the geofencing with the nanodust will be able to potentially target your DNA. It doesn't even need the nanodust. You can be targeted just vibrationally. But imagine this, with the geofencing, the planet can be a prison, meaning take away all brick and mortar prisons now, which some of the for-profit prisons are funded by, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So you take away that. People who were once prisoners can't leave their home. Why? Because if they go past a certain geofenced border, their biology shuts down.
Did you ever watch Black Mirror on Netflix?
I've heard about it, but actually I've never seen an episode.
Listen to this. So basically what they had in Black Mirror was an episode very similar to what you're talking about. Everybody had implants in their head, and their implants basically fed them their reality. So for prisoners, what they did is they would put you in a prison in your mind, and you would actually weigh out your sentence 400 years within 16 seconds in actual real time, but you lived it inside your mind for 400 years. Then what they did is they could shut off various functions of life. So if you were aware, me and you both had the sensors, they could block you. So they block you from reality. So anybody that talks is, wah, 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 wah. You can't see their face and you can't make them out. Everybody's just a blur. And they did that to people who were against the system.
Yeah. This is already real with deep brain stimulation. Go ahead, Jason.
I was just going to say.
I haven't heard from you in a while.
Yeah, it's a really good episode. And it's even like if you...
He's taking notes.
No, I've been taking notes. But in that episode, or it might be a different episode, where socially you're ranked. So let's just say everybody's watching us on YouTube and everybody hates me today, and they can bring down my social score.
Well, China was already doing that.
Social score. When it brings down my social score, it brings me down in a social level as far as
social caste system.
Social caste system. And it was just mind-numbing to think, like, how you're so influenced by your actions to please people that you would be willing to make those sacrifices just so you could have this good social score. And I was like, I'll never succumb to that. But yet here we sit and people are doing it.
And China's already started to do that.
Yeah. Look at this chat. This chat can affect you. We've had special guests on that are like all about this chat, and they just can't stand it when somebody says something negative about them, right? That's social pleasing right there at its finest. Quite honestly.
This goes back way far. If you guys read the book Surveillance, not Capitalism, Surveillance Valley, talking about how Silicon Valley was started by the defense industry. All of this was planned. Mark Zuckerberg just had a great idea, and all of a sudden, hit the like button, on that movie, The Social Network. He just, let's have the like buttons, and let's have I'm single, and all this was planned well in advance.
Well, you know what LifeLog is, right? So in the late 1990s, the CIA created a program called LifeLog, and what they wanted to do is digitally store all of the Americans in the world's personal information, videos, whatever they publish to the internet, they wanted to store it. LifeLog, the program, ended after Facebook received funding from one of those companies that you just talked about. Okay, LifeLog ended on January 14th, 2004. Facebook started January 14th, 2004.
Yeah, man. Go ahead.
So, you know what I found it interesting is Josh and I, we had this conversation last night, and that everything is material items are now moving into the digital space. So people are no longer actually getting material items in the physical realm. They're all buying stuff with fake money in the digital aspect. And I see it every day. I was talking about it with I don't know, so Robux or V-Bucks for the video games. Kids, they don't want physical stuff. They want something they can utilize in the digital space. So they're basically being trained to move into this whole digital realm, where that's where they're going to be living now. They're going to have a digital self. That's where they're going to have their digital twin in the digital space, and their physical in the physical realm here on the planet. In my opinion, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because does that part of your life energy go away? And if that goes away, what happens to the rest of the planet?
Ready Player One.
I was about to say the same thing. Well, Ready Player One. Have you ever seen that, Ben?
I haven't.
Okay, so basically they live in old tractor trailers that are stacked up in the cities, and there's nothing outside of the cities. Everything's basically these super smart cities, and the poor people live in stacked tractor trailers that are stacked on top of each other. And then all the other people live in basically high rises, but you have this thing called the Oasis, which is this digital paradise. It's all augmented reality and VR. You go in there, that's where people spend their life and their days.
These ideas aren't coming from nowhere.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
These ideas are, and really Hollywood knows a lot more. I could go super deep into the guy who made the Back to the Future films and shit that he called, which is just unreal. But
so
the digital twinning you were talking about, and we're also talking about tokenizing. The thing is everything's you get tokens for being a good parent, and in China they'll actually come by with an iPad and film you being a good parent, so it's uploaded to the mainframe, the whole thing. And 6G is really that's the interesting thing for people to look out for, because I mentioned it before, but you might want to write this one down, Jason. Sentient world simulation.
I guess, yeah. I'm gonna check that one out.
It will blow your mind. There's a document out there called the Sentient World Simulation, and it's basically a continuous simulation that will work in real time. So it'll take all news, all opinions, through a supercomputer, and it will augment the simulation in real time. So people with Niantic in this augmented VR world where you can put Mojo Vision. Mojo is coming up with these implantable contact lenses, and then eventually the ocular implants. And then we'll have cochlear implants. And then basically this is hooking into the matrix. The whole thing we're talking about is hooking into the matrix. And eventually what it is we are in this digital world that it will be, now they're calling it the spatial web and spatial computing, because The internet will no longer be on this two-dimensional screen in front of us. It's all around us. Like in Pokemon Go, if you have this ocular implant, then everything you see, and then you have this cochlear implant, and then you have certain devices set up elsewhere to where your haptic device, if you guys don't know what a haptic device is, it's basically you can wear
registers body language. So it registers body movement. It's basically registers movement in the body.
Right, but
your
it
phone
also
shakes. That's haptic.
Yes, but it also sends it back to you. So basically, we're talking about a suit that you can put on, and you're in a virtual world where somebody can walk through you, and you can feel.
This is Ready Player One. This is all Ready Player One.
Right. Yep. So where you guys know what 2/3 of the internet really is?
Porn.
Right. So where do you think the haptic devices, like that's one major place that the haptic devices are going? But on top of that, so then now you're not wearing it. It's not a suit that you get from, Nintendo, and, like it's these implantable things, which eventually there's going to be all this issue with where does, you have an obsolete piece of defunct technology in your eye or in your ear. Who's responsible for that? Is that a health thing? If you didn't do it because you don't have bad hearing, it's not, it's an enhancement. It's not, a correction. It's not a handicap correction. Right. It's an enhancement. So whose division is it? Is it the FDA? Is it, these are the things where regulation is way, way behind on innovation. But the haptic device will eventually be inside you. You're hooked to Niantic. You're hooked to the sentient world simulation. And 6G has all your digital twins. And meaning, this is where Goldman Sachs comes in. They already have this thing called a lockdown, an efficient or effective lockdown index. And this is how they bet, and they actually hedge money based upon human behavior, how we are tokenized, what our life outcomes are. So if you watch the last season of Westworld, you'll see that like people are realizing like, oh, this is what the supercomputer thinks. And they didn't even realize a supercomputer even existed, but they're like, this is why I never got that job. This is why no money ever comes into me. It's because hedge funders are like, well, Susie over here is never going to amount to much. So we're never going to allow money to go their way. Wow. We have already predetermined what jobs Susie will get.
And that's happening now?
That's already happening. It's all Goldman Sachs, mind you, a company. Just check out Alison McDowell. She'll say it.
Yeah, you have to send me the links. Now,
wrenchinthegears.com. Wrenchinthegears.com is her. She's got so much information on that. It's a blog site. And then go to YouTube and look at Alison McDowell. She will blow your mind when she's talking about the health passports and the panopticon. Because another place that we're going is a health passport. You're not going to be allowed to travel anymore if you don't get your vaccine. You need it. It's a health passport. Yep. Now, where else have we seen passes? Indian reservations, Gaza, apartheid. Yep. It's never ended well for these individuals.
Papers, please.
Right?
Yeah. So, Jay, I know you wanted to say something. Go ahead before I throw my thought out there.
So if you guys out there don't know, Ben has 2 shows at Gaia. One is called Psychedelica. The other one is called Limitless. And his newest episode of Limitless is just kick-ass. I'm going to tell you right here, I just watched it before we came on the show. It just happened to pop up, and I was like, I got time. I watched it. And a lot about what we're talking about here is talked about on that last episode. And one of the things I found really interesting was the Native Americans. It was the Pueblo Indians, maybe. And they had a hieroglyph on one of the caves. And in that, we give the example of that we're on this path of 2 choices. And in that path that they had drawn out, there was 3 rocks. And those 3 rocks represented World War I, I believe another war. And then the last one is where we are right now in time. And it's pretty mind-boggling. And I think, Ben, you've been going a lot towards this new reset stuff. And man, I really don't want to think about that because I'd rather think about the good things that are going to come. If the universe is connected in all shapes, ways, shapes, and forms, right? If you're able to say God created everything, right? Then God had to create the bad just as much as He created the good. Fair to say?
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to change the tone of this. I'm just saying is that when I perceive this in these coming days, I'd rather stay in this realm of let's be positive, because if we put forth this positive effort as a joint effort, right, part of the Great Awakening, and preparing people for it, then I guess we're doing our part in hoping for the most positive outcome rather than the most negative outcome.
Well, I think it's utilizing our intention and our minds and our creative ability to start now. To say, look, this is not the world we want. We don't want that world. Look, we want a utilization of those technologies. We want a level of integration with those technologies, but we want to be in control of it. We want to say, no, that's enough. And I don't want digital passports. I don't want to have a vaccine, a quantum dot vaccine certificate on my arm to get on a plane. Okay? That's not the world any of us want. And the only way that's going to change is if we stand up and we do something about it. If we stand up and we produce the revolution, not the revolution with guns and matter and material things, but the revolution of mind, the revolution of consciousness, the awakening of the giant, the awakening of who we truly are.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, both of you for saying that. But Jason, when you're mentioning, there's a reason why I'm not worried. There's a reason why I don't go buggy-eyed saying we're screwed.
Yeah.
And the reason is because none of this affects me. Let me say that a bit more responsibly. It affects me because I know this is a transformation that the world is experiencing and will continue to experience as those two timelines diverge from one another. I know which one I'm on. I've worked for years and years and years to live from that space. And if you watch, it's not up yet, but I did I think the last time I was just about to go to Gaia to talk about my previous show on Beyond Belief, where I was talking about 5G, and people were getting upset. There was 56% thumbs down on it because people were upset that I wasn't talking negatively enough about 5G when what I was saying was George Norrie was like, this sounds bad. And I was like, I don't know if I would use the word bad. He's like, well, this sounds just dangerous. And I said, it could be. And the reason why I said it like that is because we control this. Here's what the greatest awakening would be. It would be a future that you have to take a huge leap of faith to dive into. And that would have to be realizing that what was yesterday impossible to you is today your human potential. And what I mean by that is today, the people who cannot wrap their heads around and they refuse to believe because there's no evidence in front of them that one timeline can split this way and another timeline can split that way. And the people who refuse to wake up to their potential and they're just mired in all the details and they're like, this looks impossible. Like looking at a contract and being like, it's making me go crazy. These people are just going to live in that timeline, and you have to hold space for them, and you have to give love equally across the board for the people who wish to live in their own darkness and live in their own fear because they just have not enough evidence. They need evidence. They need everybody else to prove it for them that we create this next timeline. Yeah. And this is what I firmly believe, that the reason why I'm not worried about people coming to my door forcing vaccines upon me and my family, while simultaneously I do believe that that is a very potential thing for neighbors of mine. The reason why I believe that is because I know we are stepping into a world that is beyond our imagination right now. And it has to be. This thing that we keep calling like the awakening, the great awakening, whatever is coming, the thing that the indigenous have been prophesizing for millennia about, this thing that is coming, it has to be bigger than we could have ever imagined. Otherwise, it would just be another day for us, right? It'd be a big day, but it would just be another day for us. It has to be that big because we have to wake up to our real potential. And I don't think it's like evolution. We think it's just this slow, steady climb, but these things happen in fits, spurts, right? this will happen a lot quicker. And I told you guys I would say this Corinthians quote, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but in Corinthians it said, the change will happen, and I'm going to butcher it, in the twinkling of an eye, and the dead shall be raised at last trump. Right. And it says the trumpet shall sound, but it uses the word trumpet. But before that, it says at last trump, everything will change in the twinkling of an eye, and the dead shall be raised. And my first thought was like all those dead people that were voting in the elections. You know, just like, I don't know if you guys saw it. It was funny to me, but I was like, that's not really what I think that meant.
So it's Corinthians 15:52. It will happen in a twinkling of an eye at the last trumpet. For the trumpet will sound, the dead will be raised imperishable, and we will be changed.
Right. Wow. There's like 15 different translations, and one of them, the one that I read that William Henry read at the last expo, what was it? Conscious Life Expo. Life, yeah. He specifically used that word trump, and then he said, "What is a trump? A trump is a reverberation, a sound, a frequency."
So it's the King James version, actually. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, for the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed.
Right.
And so, I think I know what you're
doing. They separate the word trump and trumpet, so they separate those words. I thought way back in the day when I started seeing Trump Pence posters, trumpets, right? Like I was like, this is the New Testament. This is like, it just rings, it has that sound to me.
So have you ever heard of Ingersoll Lockwood, the books that Ingersoll Lockwood did? Yeah. The Last President. Mm-hmm. He did a book called The Last President, which is Trump.
Baron von Trump.
Yeah, Baron von Trump. So Baron von Trump, the journeys of Baron von Trump. And so this is it. This is just so fucked up, right? But I think I understand what you're saying. Is just like the deep state, the New World Order, whoever these controlling factions are, have not been able to do it in 50,000 years.
Right.
What's coming is they believe their end game, but what is happening is conscious evolution, conscious expansion of the soul, which means that
their end game.
Yeah, this is their end game, but guess what? It's not going to work. It has to fall for the will of the people. Because, like in the Matrix, the first Matrix we created was a complete utopia, and all crops were lost. No one would accept the program, which shows that you can fight back against the system.
Let me ask you this, and this is where I always bring it when people say, like, Ben, it seems insurmountable. Mm-hmm. I ask this question: can God kill himself?
No, God's an atheist. I always say God's an atheist.
So, I am God. All of you are God. This computer is God. There is nothing outside the kingdom of God. Nor 5G, nor the Great Reset, nor Klaus Schwab. Nothing is outside God. Everything is God. So there's only one thing that can happen. We remember.
Yeah.
That's it.
Good point.
There's only one thing that can happen.
Yeah.
And so there's no such thing as end game that ends poorly for us. We either wake up the hard way, or we wake up the easy way, or any part on that spectrum. But we wake up. That's the bottom line. This is why I have no worries, because I understand what's happening. I see it. It's happening on a timeline, and we perceive time very uniquely. Yeah. And the reason why I said there's converging timelines is because if I take ayahuasca and you take ayahuasca and you take ayahuasca and the whole world takes ayahuasca, none of us are going to experience the exact same thing, because we've all contextually had different lives, but awakening is awakening. And God must only remember. And I barely use these terms, God, but I find myself more and more having to remind people, if you're spiritual, we're talking about a mirror, right? We're all human mirrors. We're mirrors to one another. Nature mirrors us in a different way. Time mirrors us in a different way. Universe mirrors us in a different way. But the thing is can the thing in the mirror hurt you? No, it can only show you. It can only teach. It can only reflect you. It can only show you different aspects of that which you have yet to identify as you. So Klaus Schwab, I love you. The Great Economic Forum, or the Great Reset and the World Economic Forum, I love you. Why? I have no other tool in my tool belt. Why use hate? Why use remorse? Why use grudges? These are inconsequential tools. They are tools that you only feel like you need to use if you are not wielding love. Once you wield love, even Joe Dispenza says, you know, these breath techniques and certain techniques increase oxytocin by 200%. And then oxytocin then signals to nitric oxide. And nitric oxide signals to, I think it's heart-derived or it's endothelial-derived relaxation factor. And it opens up the heart literally and figuratively. And when you feel that feeling, you wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. It is the literal embodiment of unconditional love. What else can you do but share that? So when you are in love, you do not fear the Great Reset. You do not hate the Great Reset. You do not hate Klaus Schwab. You do not hate Bill Gates. You have nothing but love. And you see people that lack their knowledge of love and you wish to give. It's the only thing you wish to do is give. So this is why I say, do not fear. Anything that I've told you, I'm just telling you the details of the contract that they're trying to get us to sign. That's it. And if you sign it, it's not like you don't have any chance in the future to negate that contract. It just might get a little bit more difficult for you. You have to go through different hoops before you realize this is all the same thing. We're just being mirrored our awakening.
It might be like Cloud Atlas. If you remember Cloud Atlas in the future, there was the small mini cities all throughout the planet, but then you had the indigenous living, people that rejected society and went to live back with nature. I bet you'll see a lot of that.
Fangy devil, Georgie himself, right? The Fangy devil. And throughout time, the same characters were destined to bang their heads up against the same issues again, over and over and over again. And you know what the grand message of that entire thing is, to me, of that entire film? And I love Cloud Atlas. Yeah, the grand message of that, at the very end, it was a love story. It's love. He falls in love with this woman that, you know, through lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, they're both troubled in their own ways. And at the end of their days, they're off planet looking at Earth, and they're in love, and they're teaching their children. This is it. This is what it's always been. You have your children, you raise them, you have your community, you raise them, you share love with others, and it's this perpetual cycle. That's what we're moving into. That's what we've always had. We have forgotten. When people tell me, look at how divided people are, politics, it's so screwed up. I'm like, we fell for it. We divided ourselves.
100%.
We'd allowed us ourselves.
We were saying that last night.
Two different paradigm shifts, you know?
Saying that last night, Jay, was it was our fault. We're the blame.
What's the solution to falling for something?
It's getting back up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Learning from it.
Fool me once, shame on me. You fool me twice, well, you just can't fool me again.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Sorry, I had to.
Yeah.
But it's all a lesson. Again, guys, life is a school. It's all a lesson. All you got to do is learn. Look at your fear. Look deeply at your fears. It is your greatest teacher. I promise you. And if anyone has any questions deeper on this, or would, get a hold of Josh. You're brilliant, man. Get a hold of myself. We, everyone here, everyone that is part of this conversation, that is engaging in this kind of a dialogue, this is the community. We are here to help the awakening happen. We're not doing it. So let's try not to give, people, give us credit and give yourselves credit. But the thing is where does credit go? All credit goes to God. All credit goes to the thing that's happening. The awakening itself is happening. And all you got to do is listen. Listen and learn.
And this is gonna be interesting because I want to take that into Fringe After Dark. So we do another show right after this at 10:30, Fringe After Dark. You're more than welcome, Ben, to join us. For everybody out there, if you want to join us at Fringe After Dark, to subscription, so you can go to www.socialredpill.com. Master Patreon is the subscription there, or if you just want to watch it for tonight, just one time, it's venmo.com/redpillproject. It's $5.99 to send it over. The link is sent to you. You can find it in the description box below. I hope you all have a great night. Be safe out there. Much love to you guys. Ben is all linked up in there. Please go subscribe to him on YouTube. Hit him up on social media. Go to his website. Get his information. Watch his documentaries. He's just one amazing human being. Much love to everybody. We'll talk to you guys here soon. Take care.
Love, guys.